Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. Great to see so many people here. It's funny how the room thing, we had like a dozen people in the big room up there before, and this thing was packed. But yeah. Anyway, what's electronic signage for? Okay, so this is going to be an interesting sort of thing because obviously I based this session on a song, which is 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon. And I only realised the other day when I was typing in the year into iTunes and stuff that it's actually 1975 song and everything. So who's Paul Simon? Hands up, who's heard of Paul Simon? Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Okay, that's good. Okay, so we'll get to the song. I was playing through the video before just so it's refreshed in your memory. I'm Managing Director, Glow Digital. There's my contact info. This is our new branding, our new website that went up last night and everything. We've got a guy talking about responsive design, so we figured, gee, we better have a responsive site by the time DrupalCon comes around, so check it out sometime. We're also sponsoring coffee, and you must, this is my little spiel, you must enter our competition to win an iPad mini as well. So to do that, you have to look in your program guide and do the appropriate folding to make that to make our little program ad responsive. You'll get the gist of it. And there's a QR code on the cups that you have to take a picture of to enter. Okay, I like music, tennis, and photography, and that is a rock in my backyard. There you go. Why not? Okay, so 10 ways to cost Drupal projects. Now, there are a million ways to cost them, and really it's not so much about the costing, it's about the situations that you encounter that you have to interpret and then work out, well, how the heck am I going to approach this? So really, it's kind of more like 10 situations that you need to come up with the costing in with various different conditions. So that's really what my 10 lines of the song cover. So we'll get to the song in a minute. The 10 ways are listed thus, and I'm going to go into these in some detail. You can just read that for yourself. I've got a fair bit of material to go through. I'm not quite sure how long it'll take, so I might speed up or slow down. And any questions probably will wait to the end, and we'll try to leave a fair bit of time at the end for some questions and discussion. And I'm interested in input from you as well, because I'm sure... okay, we have to do the mandatory hands up thing. Okay, so hands up, who runs a Drupal agency and develops websites for people? Great, thank you very much. There's quite a few. Hands up, who develops websites internally for their own company? Excellent, fantastic. So it's about sort of almost a 50-50 there, which is fantastic. Okay, so the 10 ways. What's not covered? Lots and stuff. So yeah, by all means, we'll have a bit of a discussion later. Okay, here he is in the 70s. Scary stuff. Complete with the appropriate mo. This is a more recent shot of Paul Simon. And I was playing the music before, but look, I'll play a little bit now and I have to rewind here. Always dangerous playing video from within PowerPoint, isn't it? And I'm going to move it along.
The problem is all inside your head, she said to me. The answer is easy if you take it logically. I'd like to help you in your struggle to be free. There must be 50 ways to leave your lover.
Just read that as 50 ways to
She said it's really not my habit to intrude. Furthermore, I hope my meaning won't be lost or misconstrued. So I'll repeat myself. At the risk of being crude, there must be 50 ways to leave your lover.
That's one of the chorus.
50 ways to leave your lover. You just slip out the back end. So you make a new plan, stand. You don't need to be caught, right? You just listen to me. So you hop on the bus, guys. Don't need to discuss much. Just drive off the key and get yourself free. Ooh, slip out the back end. So make a new plan, stand. Don't need to be caught.
Okay, so that'll do for now. Okay, we're going to hear snippets of that again in a minute. So on with the 10 ways. Okay, so what I've got here is for each of the 10 ways to cost a project, I've got a little line of the song. So let's see if this actually works. Again, very brave doing PowerPoint from...
Make a new plan, Stan.
Okay, make a new plan, Stan. Okay, that's the short name. The long name for way number 1 is entire project from conception using a methodology with a paid discovery phase. Okay, a few problems already. What are those terms? And I want to spend a bit of time on some of these terms because it's critical to how we're going to approach this thing. Okay, so a project from conception means that you start at the beginning, where the client, in theory, has an idea of what they want to achieve, and they probably have lots of suggestions about how to achieve things. And I'm sure you'll agree that projects from conception are projects that everyone loves. You know, okay, who are developers here, please? Yeah, lots of developers and everything. Is there any type of project that you love more than a new project from conception? Any hands? Oh, really? Support. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, there you go. Very important support. But most people like new stuff, greenfields. But also, company owners like projects from conception because they tend to be a bit larger, I guess, gets the whole team involved. And project managers like them because, again, they get to work with greenfield. Developers love them because, yeah, the world's their oyster. And really, everyone likes the idea of conception, I think. Okay, but few projects really are from conception, really. It's very rare that you'll find a client comes to you and says, I've got this wad of money I want to give to you. Can you please create a plan for me with using your best practice and just make it happen? Well, at least in my experience, that's kind of rare. Usually they come up with, okay, we'll get to that. So in reality, really, they come to you with a list of things that they need. They come to you with solutions for their problems and everything. So they say, right, I need a blog, I need an event management system or something like that. And you really have to say, whoa there, Bessie. Stop, and we'll find out actually what your business problems are in order to be able to solve those. So you've really got to find out, you've really got to get past what they think the project is about and really reassess that yourself. They might come to you with some design ideas. Okay, one more show of hands here, and I promise to try not to do any more after this. Who has had a client who has strong opinions about the design? Okay, everyone. That's very impressive. And often designers will tell you, user experience experts will tell you that really they have to go back to the start as well and ask the client, well, really, what are your goals? What are we trying to achieve? So really, and the functionality needed as well. The client, has a list of things that they want you to implement, of course, and they really need to unlearn all of those things. Using methodology. So methodology is a guideline system for solving a problem with specific components such as phases, tasks, methods, techniques, and tools. The reason I'm going to this level on a methodology is because it's really, really critical that you understand that you have a methodology and that you understand it well enough to be able to quote your projects well, because the quote depends very much on your methodology in the case of greenfields projects. Typical steps in a methodology, sort of these days, it's hard to find information on methodologies because people think that they're secrets and don't want to give it to the competition and what have you. So really, if you look it up on the web, it's kind of hard to find. But these are some typical steps. Discovery phase, content strategy stuff, design, construction, launch, post-launch. So those things are about, design is typically sort of, your project brief, work out your goals. You might have some stakeholder interviews, do some user research, user types, goals, personas, scenarios, potentially. And reviews as well. So review the existing site, review the marketing strategy, review the branding, review the competition. Discovery phase, the reason I wanted to go into such detail on that is because it is critical for greenfields projects. Your content strategy, typically that'll be your information architecture, i.e. sitemap and other stuff. Wireframe diagrams, maybe responsive layouts, breakpoints, etc. Implementation strategy, which is how you put things together in Drupal. Design will typically be user experience stuff, maybe Photoshop layouts if you still use that. Style tiles, it's a really interesting concept. I don't know if anyone here from phase 2? It's a person, if you go to styletil.es, which spells style tiles, it's a fascinating concept for preventing you from needing to come up with an entire website design in Photoshop. You can just really come out with a sort of the design elements. A little bit like if you go shopping, in a bathroom sales store or something. You basically grab a tile, you put it next to some material, next to some carpet and stuff. It's a top concept, developed by someone whose name I forget, who used to work for Phase 2 Technology. Okay, so design. Construction will be building the site. Okay, that's what most people here actually know something about. Launching it, setting up database server, CDN potentially, deployment, documentation, training, go live, etc. And post-launch stuff, which is a gamut, a variety of things, including promotional activities, a support and maintenance contract, or SLA, a review of both the project process and the outcomes, measure the outcomes, metrics, and potentially continued education as well. So they're your typical steps, but and as I said before, it's pretty hard to actually find examples from the internet, but here's one. I don't know this company, Creative Stride. Anyone heard of them? They're in the States somewhere? Yeah, you have? Right, you've heard of everything. But this was good, I thought, because this did have those elements. I don't know if you can sort of read that properly, but it has a lot of that stuff that I was just sort of talking about in a slightly different words, but very important elements, all of those. By the way, the slides for this session and all sessions are going to be made available on the website all in one batch together, presumably sometime tomorrow. Here's another one, Envision Interactive. I don't know these companies, but these are the only couple that I could really find that actually listed a bit about their methodology. And one more as well. So methodology, what I've talked about so far in terms of methodology has been sort of a pretty comprehensive sort of thing. Here's one that is a little bit on the other end of the scale. From Nick's site, step 1, ask yourself, what am I really trying to achieve? Step 2, step 3, step 4, that's it. Cute. So really, a methodology is whatever you decide is going to be your working practice to get things done. And that is up to you. That's not the topic of this talk. The topic of this talk is how to cost, how to put a price on what you're going to be asking for. And I'm still explaining the term, the meaning behind making your plans stand with a paid discovery phase. So before we talked about the discovery phase having various components. And the idea is that it uncovers enough information to plan and cost the project properly. And of course, the actual steps in the discovery phase are probably going to include some of the things I mentioned before, but it will depend on how you go about doing your projects. And some people call it other things, a study, a project evaluation, and a scoping are the terms that I've heard before, a scoping exercise. Okay. Didn't we just have that one? Right. So the big advantage with, I guess, having a greenfields project with a paid discovery phase is that it gives you a huge opportunity to actually discover what the project is about without making a significant expenditure. You'll see in a minute the second way to quote projects is very similar to the first way, but there's no paid discovery phase. In other words, the client comes to you and says, hey, we want a site, give us a full proposal. And you really have to kind of make guesses. We'll get to that in a minute. So the advantage is that we know what the project's about, and then really we cost it in two phases. The first phase being we charge or quote the client for the discovery phase only. Once they're happy with that, we understand what the project is about, it's much easier to quote the rest of the project, of course. It's just common sense, really. Okay, so will the client pay for a discovery phase? And, you know, I've lost a slide here. I was editing these the other day. There's one more thing I wanted to say, and I'll find the reference later. One of the names for the discovery phase was a project evaluation, and I'll post this link. I'll fix the slides and post it, post an updated version. There's a great story. Oh, maybe it's actually coming up there. Yeah, I see it's coming up. There it is. This is a great article. It's just fantastic, and it's about project proposals. So just forgive me, I'll just read this. It's a fascinating thing. This is posted on Smashing Magazine. After several grueling days, I'd finally finished the proposal. Tell me if you relate to this. I sent it off and waited for a response. Nothing. After a few weeks, I discovered that they were just looking, in inverted commas. Despite the urgency and aggressive timeline for the RFP, plus the fact that we had done business with this organisation before, the project was a no-go. My days of effort were entirely wasted. Not entirely, though, because the pain of that loss was enough to drive me to decide that it wouldn't happen again. Holy moly, who's been there? Yeah, okay, lots of hands. This is a great article. I really encourage you to read that. There it is, actually. Stop writing project proposals. And my subtitle is Start Writing Evaluation. So they call that discovery phase a project evaluation, and they charge the client for it. Marvellous idea. Will they pay for it? That's the question. My comments are, if they're serious about the project, they'll pay for it. If they really want, someone who, if they want a half-baked solution, they should simply ask for, an entire project from conception. Vesa Palmo was here just before, popped his head in and stuff. He was talking about agile processes, and that was really, really interesting. He was saying that agile processes are really great, especially for large projects. For smaller projects, you can kind of plan the whole thing through, and things tend not to go wrong, or if they do go wrong, they don't have such an impact. Large projects, something goes wrong, they have big impacts. So wouldn't your client really, don't they need a head read if they don't actually take the project seriously and do an initial study before going any further? And the other thing is, do you really want them if they don't pay for it? Okay, so options for costing the discovery phase. There's lots of ways to do this. You can have a standard cost in theory. So you could just say, right, my typical website size is such and such, and you can say, right, $2,000 a pop, or something if most of your projects are similar. You could say variable costs sort of based on your feel for the project size. Now this word feel, I wanted to put in inverted commas because that's surprisingly important in these matters, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Maybe a percentage of the estimated project size. Chicken and the egg there, how do you work out how big your project is before you kind of find out about it? Feel has something to do with that, just chatting to the client. And potentially you could go all the way and actually do a detailed costing for your discovery phase. So there's lots of options there. Often, in the first couple of minutes of talking to a client, you will get a feel for how big a project is. And you can sort of say, you could actually present a price with conditions saying, for a typical project that is going to take, 120 hours or something to work on, we charge this much. If it turns out to be more than this, we'll charge this much more for the extra. Pretty easy. Now, I wanted to talk about feel. Feel is important in these ways. To work out the overall project size, as I said, to work out what the client is going to be likely to deal with, 3, to work out what they're likely to pay. And that's all, I think. Also, when you look at the Smashing Magazine article, check out comment 147 as well. It's really pertinent. And in fact, I'm going to read this one as well. I don't have it up here, but it goes like, it says this. I've been in this industry 17 years and have had similar issues. We now don't bother with RFPs, and now I'm very bold when someone needs 3 to 5 quotes. I ask in advance if they are getting competitive bids. I ask if I get to address the decision makers. I explain this is a relationship, not a one-time service, and let them know it can take 1 to 2 days to engineer a quote. I ask point blank if they are serious about doing business with me. If it feels right, and without question, my intuition is usually correct. Hopefully that comes after experience. I decide to create the proposal or to turn it down. So this feel thing is really important because for this guy, the feel of whether a client, sounds right for him, the decision depends on a feel. Wow. Okay. Also, I saw an interview of Mark Bolton on Bogue World, and for the life of me, I really can't find it now. It was a podcast. And he was saying that his relationship... Mark Bolton, by the way, is the guy who helped redesign Drupal homepage for Drupal 7, was it? 7? Yeah. Current version? Anyone heard of Mark Bolton? I think he redesigned the logo and everything. Yeah, tough job with a bunch of developers. And his opinion was, his relationship with the client, it has to feel right and everything. And if it doesn't, he actually knocks them back, which is kind of hard if you need the money, but often you're better off actually not entering into a bad relationship in the first place if you know it's not going to be good. I'll give you another example as well of feel, just because I think feel is so important. We have a client we're in Brisbane. One of our clients' staff changed, so the person we dealt with on this system that we developed in 2008 changed, and we dealt with a new person for enhancements and support. And interestingly enough, when the site needed some particular enhancements, our new client didn't want to tell us what their budget was. Instead, they hinted that they were considering sort of outsourcing to China, which gave me a very bad feel because we pride ourselves on high quality development and good quality processes. We have permanent staff in the office during office hours that they can talk to, and we can go around and see the client and everything. So really that started to feel like a bad match with the client, and the jury is still out about what will happen there. So my point, feel is important. Okay, now one thing I didn't test before I came on board here was whether my little...
Quick question.
Yes.
Don't you get a feel only after you've been burned a couple of times?
Yeah, well, I think that goes to experience, to be honest. It's absolutely, and the feel that you get really, once you get burned, you really get a feel for that situation again, and you don't make the same mistake twice. Okay, so thanks for the question, and feel free to chime in. I reckon that'll make it more interactive. Yo.
How do you, what techniques, when you talk to a client about this discovery phase, how do you sell it to them that benefits you?
How do you sell it to them? I think you really need to actually list out all of the benefits for your own mind and everything with respect to your methodology. So I would actually make sure that A, I know my methodology and everything, and B, I know what the advantages are. And you can also come to a couple of sessions tomorrow. There's a session by Philippe Rabim and another one by David Calculli about dealing with government and dealing with corporate clients and stuff that actually talks a little bit about that. So I would actually, work that out and make sure you've got a cheat sheet so when you talk to them you can actually do it. I know that's not really answering your question, but it really does depend on how it works. Okay. Now, the one thing I didn't test here was my Google Doc, which is not working. Oh, that's an image. I really wanted to kind of go through it. So basically, if we put it over here, there it is. Fantastic. Okay, so if I just swap back to my slide. Right. Now, you can follow along if you wish. If you've got a laptop there, you can actually go in and have a look at this, or you can do it later. It's a Google spreadsheet, so it's multi-user access. And I've made this publicly accessible. But I actually wanted to go through a bit of an example of what you can actually do to come up with a costing for the discovery phase. So it's, I guess it's sort of related to your question as well. First of all, up the top, oh yeah, and if you could, when you go into it, you'll get a little purple or different colour and everything, so if you can not move around too much, it won't distract from where I'm pointing. Okay, so you got your rate card there, you got your different people, and you feel free to actually copy this as well from where it is. You've got your different roles. You may not have as many, or you may have more roles. You can change the rates, etc. You have to decide on a contingency figure there and a project management overhead. And then you work out basically what your steps in your methodology in your discovery phase are. So you might have a project brief, which uses a project manager resource at $100 an hour. They'll take 2 hours. Yeah, good luck. With a cost of $200. So the same thing for the other roles, for these different steps. Fill in your own methodology. You need to add some sort of contingency obviously. So, I've chosen 10% there as a round number, but you could be 50% on a small thing like this, maybe. And add a project management fee. I'd always recommend to add those two items, both a contingency figure and a project management fee. Because project management fee, the idea behind these here is you're putting in the hours that the actual work is going to take. So if there was a development phase here, and we'll get to that, the hours that the developer has estimated, probably multiplied by 1.5 or 2 if if it's like other developers I know. Okay, so we have those, and out pops at the bottom a total. So we're also separating it into optional components. So here in this methodology, we've got 8 hours optionally of advanced user research, which might be some user testing, or it might be user personas and scenarios, for example. And often the client may or may not want to participate in that particular option. It's always also read another interesting article that talks about how it's great to give clients options. Okay, you give them like a vanilla version, you give them sort of a medium version, and you give them a super duper version, and they can pick their options. And for some reason, it just makes the client feel better, because if they're a budget conscious person, they'll probably go for the low one. If there's someone who just wants the bee's knees, they'll probably go for the high one. And if there's someone who is like quality but don't want to pay too much for it, they'll probably go for the middle one. Okay. There it is. Great. Okay, so that's just a screen print of that, and you can go have a look at it. Once the discovery phase is complete, then let's assume they actually said, yes, we will pay for that, and everyone was happy. The advantage is that quoting the rest of the project becomes easy, because you know all about what's going to be involved in that project. And you've got the history with the client, so they have an immediate trust in you. And to be honest, you have the inside running on the competition. Should they actually decide that they want to go out to tender or RFP, they'll invite you for sure, if you did a good job. And they'll invite maybe 1 or 2 other organisations, but you've got the inside running because you know them and they have their trust in you. So, okay. What if your methodology, I said your methodology could be anything. What if it's agile? Was there did anyone attend Vesa Palmo's talk before? Yeah, great. It was interesting that I was speaking to him afterwards as well. And I said, how sorted do you really have the costing of the agile process? And he said about 50%. So I'm glad that someone who touts a lot of experience with agile methodology really hasn't got the quoting quite worked out yet. And there I saw a tweet from him some time ago that he's thinking about it, which is great. I also saw a tweet today from Justin Freeman. Are you here? No, he's not here. Agileware in Canberra, at the Drupal shop down there. And he suggested maybe you charge by the sprint. Okay, so if you have a week sprint or something with 3 developers or something like that, potentially charge by the sprint. It sounds like a pretty good idea. We haven't done that before, but I'd be interested in hearing anyone who has worked that out. Of course, you'd have to actually sell the process to the client first. Sell them, and Vesa talked about that. Sina?
I was just going to say that kind of costing works really well on projects which are 80 or 100 above. So I think clients are much more prepared to understand.
Yeah. So for the audio recording, you come up here and talk into my neck. Please. What did you say again? You distracted me. Yeah, okay, for projects that generally cost a bit more. Yeah, look, I'm showing you figures here and everything, and look, they're totally made up sort of figures. I don't know what you charge as an hourly rate. In Sydney, it's bound to be more, higher cost of living. It'll depend on how big an agency you are as well. Yeah, so sub your own figures in. Okay, yeah, I like the idea of charging by the sprint. It sounds very consistent with that. Okay, so just as a bit of a summary then, I don't know what that slide's doing there. As a summary, I reckon this number 1, make a new plan, Stan, is a pretty good option. And this is by far my favourite way to work because it's a greenfield thing. Everyone likes the project. You can use your most recent methodology, and you know what the project's about. The risk is very low for you and the client, to be honest, to be fair. Okay, number 2, I've cheated with the first 2 because I'm using the same line from the song because they're so similar. And that's not working.
Just sing it for us.
I was considering that. Would you believe? But no. So this is similar. Entire project from conception, it's the same. Using methodology, that's the same with no paid discovery phase. So in other words, they want an upfront quote. I should clarify here as well. These first 2, I'm actually talking really about a process where the client sort of comes to you with some sort of brief, or maybe an RFQ, a request for quotation, or maybe an RFP, a request for proposal. So they're that sort of things. I'm going to talk about tenders in a minute. Okay, so without a paid discovery phase, what time did we start, by the way? Did we start at 1:45? Holy moly, better get going. Okay, we have much less information, or as we know, errant information, because we haven't had the opportunity to talk to the client about what the project is about. There's no guarantee of getting paid for the work, so basically you need to factor that into your charges. You have to make a bunch of assumptions. Because you're making guesstimates, you probably have to increase that 10% contingency figure, which will increase the bottom line cost for the client. And the client, oh gee, everyone's had this. If they come to you with a wimpy request for a website and everything, and if they go to 10 agencies, they'll get 12 answers about, and how are they going to compare those proposals? Because they'll be for totally different systems because they haven't specified it. Okay, so you'll have to decide whether you want to be part of that, really. And the risk is that you'll spend significant time and you won't get paid for that time. The self-fulfilling prophecy part is, okay, if I'm not going to get paid for the time, I'm not going to put the time in, therefore I won't win the bid. So it's a tricky thing. Some projects are probably worth it. And my recommendation would simply to be follow your gut feel, not your heart. Now, the reason I say that very briefly is because there's a project just at the end of last year that I followed my heart. It was a great cause and everything. It didn't quite stack up in the start, but I was talking to the CEO. I wasn't talking to the actual board, which were the stakeholders. But it was such a great cause. I thought, I'll just put in for this, and I'll show them. I won't respond to what they ask for. I'll tell them what they really need. Bad move. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so an example of a costing without a discovery phase. We'll move to the next sheet. Where is it? There. Okay, the entire project. It's a very similar sort of spreadsheet to the last one. We've got a discovery phase, but we've got to include a whole bunch of other things now. So we'll include all our methodology, and we've got to make some sort of guesses there. Notice how broad this is here when I work out, well, how much are we going to sort of spend on actually building the site? You've got to kind of have broad guesses here. But down the bottom, you still come out with some totals. Okay, so that's one way to actually do it. Yeah, feel free to look at that later. There we go. Okay, so the verdict on the no paid discovery phase at the beginning is try to get paid for a discovery phase, in my opinion. Yeah, it just makes it so much harder, but you can't always. Okay, number 3. Let's see if we can get this little clip going. Beautiful.
Hop on the bus, Gus.
Okay, so hop on the bus, Gus. That means the whole project is in motion and you have to run alongside and jump in. Meaning that you're asked to develop a site based on designs, existing designs, or wireframes, or prototype, or maybe someone's actually commenced the build and you have to come in and help them or take over or something like that. Much of the planning is actually done. You don't get a choice in that. Whole bunch of caveats come in here. Notice how with this costing thing, I'm actually not talking that much about costing and figures. I'm talking about situations really here that you have to watch out for and different approaches to them. So you've got to watch for all of these things. Design, missing page designs, vector design files, holy moly. Print designers do not understand vector and raster. It doesn't matter how you drum it into them, so you just say, right, we want Photoshop files, we won't negotiate on in design. You designers and developers out there will understand that one. Or they'll give you wireframes. We did an interesting project recently. A design agency got a big government job in Queensland, and they didn't have any capability to actually fulfill it, so they got us to do it. But they mocked up the wireframes in Axure. I think that's how you pronounce it. Axure? Anyone use that? Axure? It's a pretty expensive a tool, but it's actually pretty jolly good. And it gives you interactive wireframes that actually work. You can do links in it and menus and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty interesting. But therein lay a bit of a caveat, because with a working prototype like that they control, that's actually the specification. How do you lock that down? So what I did was actually got them to produce a PDF from it, which did not have the interactivity, and we ended up with a few little gotchas, functionality we didn't realise was there. And all this really goes to being able to define what you're agreeing to fairly carefully. In terms of mess, look, there's all sorts of things that can happen on a project that's started already, and you have to make this assessment before you go into it, I think. Things like they haven't scoped the project well enough, so what is being built and what you're asked to build is actually not what the client wants and will make them happy, so therefore it's going to be a lose situation. You probably don't want to be involved in that, or you try to be proactive and actually redirect the project, get it back on track. And that particularly happens if the goals of the project have not been defined. The relationship with the client is often messy, and of course the old beauty, insufficient budget. If they don't really have the money and they want you to bring you on board, do you really want to be part of it if they don't have enough money to pay to do it properly? Okay, so what do? You have to decide. You could do a detailed costing. You could, I suggest always lock down the scope. That's probably the most important thing. Work out who's responsible for what, particularly when there's multiple organisations involved, and define the conditions in a contract. Very important. I'm going to skip through this. The most important thing that's in the contract has got to be really the specification. If you don't have that careful enough, you're just asking for trouble, and you're taking on a significant liability and a risk. in terms of, if there's just a rough sort of wireframe or something of some functionality that can be interpreted different ways, the client will interpret it to their advantage, and potentially you would interpret it to your advantage. So it's in everyone's interest to actually have it well defined. Move on. Have a look at some model contracts. There's a few examples of some model contracts on the web there. Yeah, Ryan.
Just a quick thing on your last slide. You said standard stuff, and one thing you included was scope. Then you have a separate specific one that says specification. The only way I find that scope and specification are different ones for the same thing. I was just curious.
Where's? Oh, yeah, up the top. Yeah, yeah. I think I was looking at the contract that we actually used, and it has a generic scope section, sort of say this is a website development contract, blah blah blah, legal stuff. And then in the what do you call it? The addendum, the schedule, we actually define in more detail what it is, and that usually refers to an external document, which is like a specification document anyway. And have a look at the resources. There's some good contracts out there. I suggest you use a contract. Very important, contract conditions. And that was my coverage of contracts, Ryan, because you put that comment on the page. That's it. No time for anything else. So the verdict for method number 3, hop on the bus, Gus. Yeah, can work, okay, but make sure the project is on a good footing, would be my summary. Okay, number 4. We're going to really speed up now. Okay, this one here.
You don't need to be coy, Roy. You just listen to me.
Okay, just listen to me. You will do it how I say you will do it. Tenders can be really prescriptive, and often you don't get a choice really about how the thing works. For example, the worst kind of prescriptive, I'm sure everyone who's done tenders have actually seen this, the dreaded standardized CMS requirement list. Drupal actually handles these things fairly well and everything, but man, it takes you a long time to respond. They won't be written for Drupal. Pam Barone is going to have a great session tomorrow called Rethink Your Requirements, and it's all about fashioning your requirements around Drupal and what it can do. And often it's just a slight change of wording or a slight change of requirement that really doesn't mean anything to the client that will make some hard thing simple. Yeah, and you all know that. So yeah, these requirements, this particular one was 111 requirements, and that's not as bad as they get. They get significantly worse. And I just think they're really sucky, to be honest, because it's a cop-out for the client. They simply don't have to think. It's not related to their real requirements. Why do they want all this stuff? Because they think they might need it or something. As you know, PHP being interpretive, adding lots and lots of extra modules, you want to make sure you put them in there for the right reasons, because it's going to make your site slower or more heavy anyway. I know there are ways you can deal with that, but gee, isn't the best way actually not having the problem in the first place? And the suckiest reason, I must say, we won a tender a few years ago, and the client said to me after, and it had one of these big long lists, and I responded to it, and the client said to me after, oh, he didn't really mean that. We just got that from, we just bought that list of requirements so that we could pre-qualify the vendors, make sure that they knew what they're talking about. Yep. So that's not valuing the vendor's time. Okay, so what is a tender? It's a structured invitation to vendors. Usually it's very formal and well organised and well intentioned and everything, but can really be off the mark and stuff. But as I said before, if you give them something other than they asked with, they might welcome it with open arms. They might also disqualify you completely, so it's a bit of a lucky dip there. As well as being prescriptive, there can obviously be a significant investment involved. Tenders are usually quite large. They only have one winner. We, again, a couple of years ago, applied for Work Cover Queensland, a nice high-profile sort of site. There was a second round, so we got in the top 3 for the first round, and then the next round was give us a demo system. Which is also kind of interesting. And so we gave them what they said was the best demo they had, and then they chose someone else, which is kind of interesting, for a lot of reasons. Risk assessment as well, can be really important for tenders. I'm not going to have time to go over this, but seriously look up ASNZS ISO 31000. Sounds really hard. It's the Australian standard, which has been adopted as the international standard now. And it's very clear, but you just have to go through certain steps, such as have a risk management framework, have a process, and this is really probably the topic for another day, I think. But I've got a few notes in here that you can look at. The most important thing is the risk register, which is really define all the things that could go wrong, work out how important they are or how severe they're going to be, and tell us how you're going to mitigate those risks. And if you don't do that, and one of your competitors does do that, they will assume the worst of your ability to be able to cope with those risks because you haven't addressed them. And tenders are often difficult for small companies, to be honest, because they require so much work and everything, and they sort of seem to be sort of set up for larger companies, particularly when government departments feel better about employing larger organisations to do things. Yes and no, but that's what I've found certainly a couple of times from experience. These days, Drupal is much bigger. It's much more well accepted in larger organisations. And again, we're going to hear about that tomorrow. And of course, there are partnership opportunities with companies like Acquia and others. How do you cost them? Okay, I think you have a detailed list again. You've really got to sort of work out what's going to be in that list and everything. Use a similar sort of spreadsheet to what we had before, but it's going to be much bigger simply because there are so many more things involved. Include your preparation time. They're going to ask at least five, probably 10 organisations are going to submit. They get the benefit of all that 10, the 9 that actually miss out, who put in the work and everything. So I reckon they can be charged a bit more. Tendering organisations also tend to be bigger projects. They are less price sensitive, but particularly these days in state government departments, with governments being fairly strapped for cash, they are after overall value for money. So they really want good quality at a reasonable price. Doesn't have to be the lowest price though. And there's lots of places that you can actually find tenders. There's a few examples there. Okay. And that's my verdict on tenders then, is they can be very worthwhile, but think carefully before committing to the substantial work involved, I would say. Okay, the ballpark estimate. We did start at 3:45, didn't we? Okay, is that right? Yeah. Ballpark estimate is like gold, because if you can actually give a quick ballpark estimate to a client, instead of spending copious hours, it saves everyone a lot of time potentially. So really my definition of the ballpark estimate is coming up with a number without putting in a heck of a lot of effort. All these situations is when they can be handy, and there's lots and lots of situations there for when to use a ballpark estimate. Again, it's sort of related to this idea of, feel. You get a feel for the project, a feel for the client, to work out sort of how much a project's going to cost. And often you can actually give them a ballpark answer that you think is going to be rightish, and they'll say, no, it's too much, and that's it. But you haven't spent a lot of time on it, so great. Oh, we didn't have the thingy, did we? No one told me.
You don't need to discuss much.
Yeah, which is really cool. You don't need to discuss much on those because you don't need to go into a detailed discovery phase. Okay, how to make it. A few ways. You can compare it to what you've done before. You can use your feel again. Add up some rough costs. And look at number 6. Okay, so verdict. I love ballpark estimates because I reckon it just weeds things out. Okay, this is probably the trickiest one, high-level function point counting. My version of this, function point counting has been around for a very long time, and it's all to do with basically... Sorry? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. John?
Just drop off the key, Lee.
Okay, drop off the key, Lee. Now, unfortunately here, I shouldn't admit to this, should I? I forget why I put this line on this one, because I worked this out like last year. So I'm open to suggestions. Maybe it's the key. Yeah, it's probably because it's the key to doing a quote for a really big, complex project. And I'll just brush over this really quickly. So there's 4 steps, really. You classify high-level website functions, okay? So they're things like we need a business directory, we need an events management system, and we need some other stuff. Okay, you assign each of those terms in Drupal speak, vocabulary terms, a number. So small, sorry, I'm actually not reading what I'm doing here. So you've got small, medium, and large, you classify. So your business directory might be a large, so you assign it a 9. And your blog will be like an easy, a quick, a small, so you'll assign that, say, a 1. I won't go to the spreadsheet, but basically here is where we put this together. Maybe I will go to the spreadsheet because it's a bit complex. High-level function point counting. That's the other thing, is you can't be offline to look at these things, can you? Okay. I'll run through this really quickly. So we have a magnitude table, small, medium, large jobs, and these are the high-level functions: homepage, news, galleries, blogs, competitions. You classify them with a magnitude. How big is that approximately? From this table here, we work out the number of units of work, and we add them up at the bottom. So total number of units of work are 49. Sorry, I'm going through this really quickly. So therefore, that translates at, 3 or 4 hours per unit of work to 147 hours. You add on your project management cost, and I forgot contingency. Oh, there it is. Fantastic. And hey, presto, at the bottom, you get a number. Now, this is kind of like your ballpark estimate for a humongous project where you don't want to just go, what do I think sort of that's going to be from a feel. It's really taking into account what's involved in the project and giving it some rough ideas. So have a look at the spreadsheet later on anyway. It's an interesting sort of technique. I use it every now and then when someone does want a quick, in other words, when they don't want to take much time, they don't want to sort of pay for any discovery phase or anything, you can give them some sort of ballpark estimate. Any questions on that one? Sorry, yeah, I'll ask you. Yep.
So you show that to the client, or you just give them the end figure?
I've showed this to the client. Yeah. Look, I like to be pretty open and honest, about how I come up with things. And if also they tend to, if you give them the bottom line, the 40 grand, they'll say, oh, what does that involve? What can I cut out? They don't have any information. But then you're also giving them a haggling point. So swings and roundabouts. John.
So would you use this? They gave you a specification document. You go through it and pull out each of the items and rank.
I think you'd have to compress a lot of things into a big heading, really. Yeah. Often they haven't actually thought that far, about the specification, I reckon, for this one.
A little bit on this topic. So
Yep.
Do you even give them the contingency project management figures? Do you usually try to hide it?
No, I don't try to hide it. No, I tell them what my contingency is. As long as they don't say when you're actually in the project and you use up some of the contingency, they said, there's a bit of contingency left. Can we use that for something else, please? You make it clear right up front. This contingency goes into our calculations. What we're charging you is a fixed price bottom line. That's what's in the contract. Yeah, you've got to be clear. One of my tips before was make sure they understand your contract. Yeah. Okay, moving right along because we have to have some questions and finish. I know I'm in trouble. We are back. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. Yep. 147. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. That's excellent. One of the things that I skipped there was, this one here. So I took the leap of saying, if I go right up to the top, I'm actually saying, right, a project is actually going to be 40% development and 60% something else. Because we've sort of worked out, well, we've got pretty good development capabilities. And we've sort of worked out, right, well, the rest of the phases, according to our methodology, are really going to take about 60% of the project, sort of all up, and 40. So that's the extrapolation phase, basically, to the rest of the project. You might decide to actually base it on something else and extrapolate based on different figures, but that's just an example.
Do you also have to be clear with your client as well, like that, whether or not they're actually looking for an estimate for the entire project versus just the development cost of the project?
So I've just lost my place here, Ryan, with my PowerPoint. Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
So, I mean, obviously, I think it's great that you do actually kind of use the percentage of the development to kind of extrapolate the total cost, but it
Yep.
obviously sounds like you would want to make sure that you're clear with your client, but whether they're asking for the cost of the total project or whether they're asking for the cost of just the development portion of the project.
That's when it becomes probably a bit dicey, and you'll have to make your own decisions about how you'd structure that and whether you show it to the client. Okay, I lost my place there, but so high-level function counting. So the verdict on that one is really that that can be really handy for quick estimates. Okay, the last couple. Why can't we just sleep on it? No time for music. This is really. You want music? Oh, that's a really long one, though.
He said, why don't we both just sleep on it tonight?
Okay, so
And I believe
sing over it,
morning you
maybe.
begin
Low
to see
budget
the
but
light.
high expectations, be creative. Oh, gee, no one's ever heard that before. Low budget but high expectations. Every client really kind of falls into that category almost in some ways. I'd just say be creative, think outside the box. I've got a few ideas for how you do that, but I'm sure you've got lots and lots of other ideas yourself. Okay, an existing Drupal system. Sometimes clients actually come to us. Where the heck's the mouse? There it is.
The problem is all inside your head, she said to me. The answer is easy if you take it logically.
Okay, so they have an existing Drupal system developed by someone else. They want you to take over development and or maintenance of the system. That happens a heck of a lot, I think. And look, the answer is really easy. Do an hourly rate on it because you don't really know where that system came from, I think. Why bad development on it? There are ways to actually analyse sites. There's the Acquia Insight tool, which we haven't used before, but it sounds like it does that sort of thing. And there's some other things. Maybe the problem was the actual client was bad client rather than their developer. And usually you can tell that by the feel when you talk to them. So I reckon start with a small task, bill in advance, blocks of hours, easy. Okay, something. Here we are.
And I wish there was something I could do.
Here's a funny one. Quote high if you don't want the job or the client and you can't tell them directly. And there's lots of reasons why you can't tell them directly. Maybe they're difficult to deal with, and you can never tell a client that, really, because they just won't see that. So quote high, you don't want the work. You don't agree with the project's morals. I just got to tell you, I hadn't actually worked out. I got a call early on after starting Glow Digital from a brothel. They wanted me to do a brothel website with explicit content. And I said, I'll get back to you. But then I quickly worked out a policy to deal with that. And since I've said that, I have to deal with what the policy was, which was if I don't feel comfortable showing my kids, I'm not going to take it on. Yeah, and I've used that a few times. It's great. And maybe you don't want to tell them. Yeah.
I told someone yesterday I didn't want to do this because I already had a client in that same field in a similar area.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to create competition between my customers.
Fantastic. Yep. Yep. So, and if the match doesn't feel right, or if they smell, maybe you don't want to tell them that. I don't know. And lastly, this is my absolute favourite, and it's a great one to finish on.
Ooh, slip out the back, Jack.
Okay, tell them you don't want to work with them. declined to be involved, and for a number of reasons. You know, that you can tell them you haven't got enough money, this isn't going to work, and everything. You disagree with their morals, you know, and you can tell them. And the old famous history of bad debts. So there's a few summary points there, but we're out of time. I wanted to incorporate this in somewhere, but I really couldn't find a spot for it, so I thought I'd just throw it in at the end. I thought that was excellent. Maybe, yeah. Okay, maybe the moral is read the fine print in your contracts. All right, so we're done. Okay, any questions? Sorry, I haven't left any time for questions and stuff, but I'm glad we had some time in between. Look, I'll take one, just maybe one. Anyone with a question? Otherwise, we'll talk later. Great. Oh, yes, Ryan. Yeah, okay.
One thing that I didn't see you actually cover was when you actually might use a range for estimates.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the ballpark. Yeah, definitely. And any other situation as well. A range is good. Yeah. Look, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your attendance. Hope that was useful. Oh, yes, and you've got to complete feedback as well. Apparently they want you to complete feedback. There's a feedback form now on the website. Thank you.